I make a motion that we approve the minutes incorporating the most recent amendment offered by Paul, naming the resident Branston as opposed to Preston.
Yeah.
Second. Any other comments? All in favor? Glad you asked them if they were in favor too.
You guys in favor?
Mike and Wendy, the minutes of November's meeting, are you in favor of approving those?
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, sorry, I had to do that.
Okay. Who seconded it? Lee? And Louise, okay. Any questions or issues from Bayside residents and meeting attendees? Since there's no one here, I'm assuming the answer to that is no. Report of the president. The president's absent, so I am here and I have no report on his behalf. Report of the treasurer.
So I'm going to circulate warrants, and Amy, where's the December pieces?
I know Vicki had
Judy
it.
already had, okay. So we have one set that we're circulating that does not have any documentation attached. Those are the warrants that we pay in December because we don't meet. Next year we'll have all that stuff attached for you to review. And then on top of that are the normal ones we have from this month, which I'll start with you, Paul. So a handful of things. So our first closing for 2017 was very positive. We have about $20,000 in net income after expenses. Now that number will continue to move as we go through the second closing and auditing process. But those are all funds that are going to be carried into this year for use in infrastructure projects. So that's really, really good news from where I sit. Some of the reasons that we made out as well as we did were that overall tax revenue and related revenue on that side of the financials was about $5,000 more than budgeted. We had budgeted to pay the forgiven interest on the 2009 Maine Municipal Bond Bank bond. So that was almost a $10,000 windfall. So those two items alone resulted in about $15,000 of that $20,000 net income. Now, to be sure, we had some areas we were overspent or underspent, but on balance, it worked out pretty well. Wendy and Mike, I have circulated to the rest of the group a version of the estimated variance report that I did last year that starts looking at 2018, and I'll email that to you since I finished it earlier this morning. So as we start out, there are already some accounts where I know we're in the hole. And also some accounts where I'm pretty confident we're going to have a positive variance at year end. The most notable one at this point in time is that our combined waterfront expenses, primarily for maintaining the wharf, is going to be about $5,000 overspent. This number has bounced around over the years, partly because our invoices came in on a very irregular schedule. But broken down, we spend about $6,000 with Bayside Marine to repair and maintain floats. We spend about $3,000 with Proc Marine to do the wharf maintenance. We spend $2,000 with Dean Brown to have him move the floats back and forth. We spend about $600 with Pinnacle Engineering for the inspection. And then there's another $400 in village labor and/or miscellaneous expense. So that's a bigger number, and as time has gone on and we refine our accounting, it's a little bit clearer to us where this money goes. So at any rate, we'll be overspent there. So that's the top half of the sheet above the blue line. The second half talks about our contingency spending. So our contingency budget this year is $22,000, which is not an awful lot of money, but we are going to carry over, based upon the warrant in this past annual meeting, that allowed us to use surplus funds, an amount of $32,581. Now that number will also continue to change, but it's relatively close. And what that is of the $20,000 in net income and all of the reserve funds last year that were approved that are currently being held in a Centennial account that we never needed to use because of some of the other windfalls we had. So what that does is gives us about $55,000 toward infrastructure. Now that sounds like we're in great shape until you consider the first three things that I know about that we'll spend money on. in that $54,000 are $8,000 toward electrical, $15,000 toward seawall consulting, and I estimated $3,000 toward tree work and replacement that we never got done last year. That still leaves us with about $28,000 to do any of a variety of projects as we move through the years. We aren't obligated to spend that money, but to the extent there's anything that legitimately needs to be done, this would be a good year to do it. Whatever we don't use will just roll back into reserves, so it's not a problem for us in any way. But it's a unique opportunity to make sure that we are in good shape before we start putting out a bond for the seawall.
If there is, if I may, if there is a surplus from this year, do we have, can we roll it into next year and have access to it? Or does it have to go into reserve?
So I guess we can always put a warrant in and ask the voters to approve it and roll it forward. But as I look at the future, I'm not sure we're going to need to do that. Most of the work we need to do to prep for the seawall should occur this year. And if it does, then the next step is going to be to use some combination of reserves and a bond to fund the seawall replacement, repair, whenever that happens. So like, you always can do that, is the answer. You always could have a warrant saying, can I roll those forward?
But you need approval from the village?
Yes, from the voters.
We need an affirmative warrant. This was the first year, through the guidance and foresight of Steve, that we put that on the warrant, that any extra money that rolled over that we hadn't spent, we can actually spend in the succeeding year. In order to do that again, we have to have the affirmative warrant that
So
we
it's
had
only
last
one
year.
consecutive year?
Right, we have to ask each year.
Right.
But I would just want to echo Steve's point that since we know we're going to be spending a lot of money on a seawall 2019, this is the year, if we see projects that aren't seawall related, that are important to us, we should do that and then get all our focus on the seawall if we can.
So, Mike, Wendy, any questions?
About the windows, has everything, all the money been spent to pay for those?
So for windows, we had, bear with me 1 second.
I think it's 9,800 in donations.
We spent $14,000 and had $9,800 in donations. And we have, in the warrants that we are approving now is $2,500. I think there's one more payment due of $2,500. So that's almost done. That will have to come out of some of these funds.
So I was wondering.
Right, well, they come out of the Centennial Funds. Didn't we vote that affirmatively, that any excess money comes out of Centennial? Any excess needs?
I thought so.
At this point, no.
Okay.
But Centennial's exhausted because you voted to use that for electric.
The 8th, yeah, okay.
So there are no Centennial funds left on the balance sheet, or will not be once we go through the auditing process.
Great, okay. But that was, you know me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to our citizens and residents who cared about the windows, because the ratio of the total cost with the people who reached into their personal pockets made this very easy for the village to fund, so.
Yeah, and the Bayside Historical Preservation Society is planning one more fundraising effort, so I don't know how that'll shape out, but we may see yet some more money.
How about the status of the painting? How much of that was paid?
It's all paid.
All paid?
Yeah. We have, anything we did this past year is paid for. So the windows are actually a project, the second phase of windows are actually a project in this year. But some of that expense was paid at this point, until we go through the whole bookkeeping process. We've paid $2,500 forward out of last year and still have $20,000. So one of two things will happen. That $20,000 number will go up by $2,500 and we'll spend it this year, or it'll stay the same. Either way is okay for us.
So regarding the windows, we have, what, another 7,000 to expend before that's completed? Roughly 7,000?
The invoice is in that top pile, and I don't recall, I think we paid a down payment of $3,000 last year, and there were two more payments due this year of $2,500 each.
Right.
I think of the numbers, Paul, but I don't remember exactly.
paid 3 at the time that they took the second set out, right?
But we should be able to easily cover that.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. And I'll include that in this estimated
And
variance.
we may
report.
still get contributions.
We may still get contributions. Okay, so the last piece I have, I guess that's it on financials. I have some sort of new business, for lack of a better term. The first thing is a budget workshop schedule. And again, I'll send this to you, Mike and Wendy, when we get out of this meeting. We started this last year. Oh, great, okay. We started this last year so we didn't have to have a marathon meeting when it came time to process the budget. Last year we started in January, that clearly was much too soon, so I put together a revised draft schedule. And I think I'm going to just touch on the pieces that matter to the Safety Committee and the Infrastructure Committee, because those are two of the biggest pieces of the budget, and those are also two of the hardest ones to get done on schedule. So last year, we tried to do both of those early in the year, and that just didn't work. The committee members weren't around, you couldn't make it happen. So Mike, what I've done is I've penciled in that we would review the draft infrastructure budget for 2019 at our April Overseers meeting, April 15th. Is that realistic? Will you guys be able to get your heads together and figure that out by that time?
I think we should. I think we should be able to do that, yes.
You know, and the worst thing that happens
Well,
is...
why do you think April is a good time? I guess the question.
Well, so we have our final budget workshop in June. So even though the annual meeting and everything that's approved doesn't occur until August, we have to have everything done and in Amy's hands by July 1st. So the time frame, usually we have a budget workshop just before the Overseers meeting in June. That budget is approved by the Overseers for submission to the voters at that June Overseers meeting. So all this pre-work needs to be done sometime before that. Now,
Okay.
there are options. We could have conceivably a special additional meeting to look at the infrastructure budget. We could do that with anything that we need to do. But what I've tried to do...
No, but we don't want to have to do that. It's better to do it on the regular schedule.
Yeah, let me jump ahead a little bit, because this is the Safety Committee piece, and I don't know if this is realistic either, but Wendy, I penciled in the May 13th Overseers meeting. Do you think that enough of the Safety Committee will be around to have taken a look at the budget and have recommendations ready at that time?
Wendy?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yes, we should be able to do that.
Yeah, because last year we tried to do it far too early, so I moved it out. So all this is, I mean, if to the extent we can live with this schedule, that's a beautiful thing. To the extent that we need to change it, we will. Right now, I've scheduled the final budget workshop meeting on Saturday, June 16th, which is the Saturday before the Overseers meeting. Now, last year, I think it took us about an hour because of the pre-work we'd done. But by default, anything we don't get done is going to end up happening in that meeting. So we still have a fallback position in June, but that is our last opportunity. Okay, so I'm going to zoom, I'll send that out, we'll work with that schedule. And the other two pieces I have are really for you, Mike, which is the lion's share of this money that we have to spend in 2018 is dedicated to infrastructure committee projects. So to the extent we can get moving with the seawall consultant, that'll be a good thing. The electrical work, we're good to go. We're good to do the whole upstairs from what I can see with the funds we have. And I know that the Overseers had approved $8,000 as a starting point. We can certainly vote on additional funds as we go through the year. But can you get Bill what he needs to get estimates together or to line up an electrical contractor so we can start that moving?
Yeah, we do want to talk a little bit about that when I get to my report. But there have been some extra costs, shall we say, associated with installing the potential connection for the generator. And we didn't want to move forward without discussing it with everybody here.
Yeah, and I think that makes plenty of sense. All I'm trying to do is just, time flies, and what I've discovered about the village of Bayside is that as much as we try to get things done, we meet infrequently and a lot of time goes by very quickly before we can actually pull the trigger. So just an early heads up.
Right.
And that's all I hope, Lee?
Okay.
Mike, I looked into the switch for the generator, and if you have a portable generator, you have a different switch versus one that automatically comes on as a power source.
Okay, look, can we hold that until Mike's report then? Okay. Okay,
Yeah, that's what I thought we talked about that.
Yeah.
Keep it off the trigger.
okay, so we're gonna, that's the treasurer's report, thank
That's
you.
all.
Thank
You're welcome.
you. And village agent, Bill?
I really haven't had a chance to sit down and get my December thoughts in my head. I believe we went through December in pretty good shape. We had some storms that were a little nerve-wracking with the dock and the seawall. They all took the storm in real good shape. The seawall, we might have loosened up some planks, so that might be a little maintenance thing that I'll have to do later on once the weather gets better. But overall, that whole area held up very nicely. We just lucked out by the way that which directions the wind came. That helped us out. The snowstorms that we had, those went by very well. The problem I know that we had with trying to get down into 12 Auditorium Park, I tried to go down the way that I mentioned, but it's just impossible to back up in a storm and get around that stone wall at the top because it's always on your blind side. And at one point, I started to slide sideways, and I made up my mind that I wasn't going to damage the village truck by staving up the side of the truck, sliding into a telephone pole. So I had to go down the other alleyway, the narrow part of the alleyway, to be able to go down through there and get that plowed out so we could get an oil truck down in there. To this date, everything's been fine that I know of. The oil truck has made it down in there. I kind of keep an eye out on the schedule that he comes, so I make sure that it's sanded extra a little bit so they can get down in there, because it's very tough for them to get an oil truck in there too. So that seems to be going okay. We may have to do a little extra cleanup up through there that's not on our cleanup budget that we have for parks and things, but that will probably come out of roads, because we will have a little bit of cleanup from going down through there. The only other thing that's really, I have had, and it may be, we're not quite sure, but I think it may be the problem that we're having with the sand at the town sand shed is they had to change their mix of their salt, so they're having problems with big chunks of salt getting really hard, and they're going through the grate on my sander and keep making it stop. So I have to keep taking the back off him, and it's a big process to take it off, to get in there, to actually get the thing working again. And we've had a few repairs we've had to do to it. So in that process of doing that, we've been very lucky so far, but I'm going to ask the overseers, and I don't have an idea on price right yet. We need to get some lights and at least a couple outlets in building number 2, the new building that we built a couple years ago, because it's awful dark in there and it's hard to hold a flashlight under your armpit and a wrench in your mouth and 2 other wrenches in your hand to work. And to get the light where you want it. So I thought maybe we was gonna get by with the one light from the garage door that was doing it, but it's just too dark in the wintertime to do that. So I need to get a price together on that maybe I can get back to you guys next month on that. Other than that, everything else seems to be going good, knock on wood. This last thaw that we just had the other day, Cove Road in several places really opened up bad, so you sunk down pretty deep into the ground. I tried grading it out with a snowplow just as it started to freeze last night. I got some of it, but I didn't get all of it. Hopefully that will work itself out. The other roads, evidently the frost stayed in the ground in those areas, so those roads look pretty good. So at this point, I don't see any problem with that. All our drainage seemed to work very well, except for a couple that's on the town's road. I think we're in good shape.
I have a question, it's a tree thing. Have you heard anything back from the Spencer tree people about the rest of the work they need to do that you think they've already been paid for?
No, I've called them several times and I haven't heard a thing.
Just wondering. Okay, that's the office manager. On to committee reports then. Judy for communications.
Just actually, that was the-
Oh, Bill, I'm sorry. Amy, office manager. Sorry. Cross your.
The only thing that I have is a request. Bill is looking to have a special event on February 10th, a Saturday, for 2 hours. And he was looking for approval to be able to use the conference.
For Iris's birthday?
So that was the only thing that has come across my desk.
We don't need to really approve that, do we?
As long as all the criteria
There's
is
been that, and we've been.
happy birthday, guys.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Now on to committee reports. Communications.
I have nothing concrete to report. Whatever I promised I would do in November, I did. And I don't have any clue what it was at this point. And I guess I just want to say, because you all saw the water leak notice from Danny, that Danny is a wonderful resource for keeping us knit together, and we all couldn't do it without his website. So just a matter of sending out an email and we immediately reacts. Makes it easy for all of us.
Finance.
Finance, we have not had a meeting. The Utilities Committee has a few things they've charged me to talk to Steve about, because we're working towards the first close. We want to make sure we understand that everything looks good. And nothing to report.
Infrastructure, Mike, you're up.
For infrastructure, one of the things was a governance item maybe. You were going to talk about the wharf with some of the Rockland folks.
You are right, I was going to, and I think I've had that under communications instead of governance, but you're right, and I didn't. I should
Oh, I
have,
thought it,
because I was with Jim.
I thought it was
Yeah, you're absolutely right, I did. Yeah, I was with both Jim and Gordon, but I guess we talked about everything but. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's not a rush right now, but we just want to get a handle on that with whatever we're going to do long term.
Yeah, it's a
for
good,
Europe, so.
I'm sorry to have forgotten that.
Do you want to share with us what the issue was? Or?
It was, we were going to talk about how to better manage the use of the boat float and get some handle on how the pressures of the boats, the dinghies which are not following the rules. We're just not going to enforce the rules. How can we better get the rules to match the needs of the wharf with the pressure on the structure?
Yeah, starting with the rules that are in place, before we start making new rules, we need to get those working really better.
Right.
So responsibility or if it needs to be something else.
Okay, I thought we sort of determined that it wasn't the lifeguard's responsibility as far as the dinghies. The lifeguard has other rules and responsibilities. The dinghy is the wharf master's responsibility. But yes, a clarification down the road.
Right, because the lifeguard's the one who's there, 6 to 8 hours a day. And so, again, it is an enforcement issue.
Well, if you want to make it the lifeguard's responsibility, I mean, there's an option there, I think, in their discussion, probably, but.
It's certainly, from my point of view, something to discuss as an option. I don't see it as a viable option because it takes the focus of the lifeguard off of the swim float. Of course, the lifeguard's watching the boaters go into the swim area anyway, so it's communication. It's all about talking to people and making them follow the rules. That's the hard part. We've got a lovely wharf master who has been very clear that he doesn't want to do that. And we've got a very good but young lifeguard who has a lot on his or her hands already.
Right, I think that one thing could be if you were going to assign it to the lifeguard at the end of their shift, they could move the boats that have been sitting there too long off to the other line. And that could be really saying that I would be on the ship, but I think it's more of a wharf master also.
Right, and there has been a discussion about actually hiring another person to deal with some of these issues.
Right, like incorporating what Ethan has been doing as a type of launch service and making that an employee of the village, someone who can serve as the liaison between the owners of the boats and the use of the boat float in the same way you have over at Castine.
Michael, anything else for infrastructure?
Yes. I have a question about the seawall design. Is that something that we can sole source or we have to put a bid package together? It's about $50K.
What, I didn't hear exactly, is it something we have to put out for bid or we can self-source? Is that what you said?
I said, could we sole source it to one, to Pinnacle, or do we have to put a bid package together and have Pinnacle or others bid out?
So we're talking the consulting?
Yeah.
I'm most comfortable with an RFP on that. That's a big chunk of money, and I would want people to compete, tell me what they're going to do for that money, and tell us particularly how they're going to try to work with us on that before I send the contract to any particular guy. I don't want to just send the contract to one guy.
RFP.
That request for proposal,
Oh.
like, it's a lot of money.
Okay.
That's my personal.
Yeah, it's $50K. And then it's obviously $50K to start and more as we go.
Okay, given that answer, then what?
Then that'll be one of our first tasks is to get the RFP together so that we can get that cost from them. And we'll get a couple of bids, try to get a couple of bids. I'm not worried about how many bids we get as long as we do an RFP.
I think that the answer is yes, you need to do an RFP.
We haven't settled on a design yet.
All right, so that's something that we'll have to work on and get lined up before that April deadline. Then the second thing is the electrical service, which we started to touch on during the treasurer's report. We have been moving along with this, and I think Billy can chime in on this, but we kind of slowed down because when we talked about this last month, 2 months ago, November, we talked about putting in new service from the road to the building, new 200 amp service, and a connection for an emergency generator, an auto start. And that ended up being a lot more than the auto start. So we going to chew up a huge portion of that money. So we wanted to come back and find out if that's what the overseers as group want to do. I heard somebody chime in to suggest that the emergency service with a manual which would be much less, and maybe we can talk about that with you.
So that was what Lee was talking to us about. You had done some research on that, Lee?
I have a farmer friend that had the style of transfer switch that I have now. And he put in a automatic switch, and they're two different kinds. They aren't the same. The one for the standby generator that will come on automatically if the power goes off is a little more expensive. And it's not the same. You can't use one for the other. So, given that the building probably ought to have, this is my personal opinion, you're probably better off with a system that comes on automatic rather than trying to find somebody that's going to hook up the generator to the thing. I mean, nobody wants to be out there. Farmers do it, but most people aren't going to want to be out there in inclement weather trying to hook the generator up to the transfer switch. That would be my,
I mean, we're talking about a public asset that you're trying to protect, so you want to have it be protected to the maximum, which is automatic.
Right. I guess to me, it's really, go ahead.
Are we talking about a generator that we haven't even, I thought we were talking about upgrading the electric inside of the building so that we could put light staging
Right.
and upgrade everything.
Yeah.
We're talking about a generator we haven't even decided we're going to have yet? I mean,
Right.
talking about a switch.
a switch, yeah, well, for a generator that we haven't decided we're going to have yet. A switch for a generator we don't have.
Yes, so the deal is that you have three choices here. For a generator down the road, we have a permanent install, like a cooler that's mounted somewhere behind the building and goes on automatically. We have the other end of the spectrum, which is it's a small generator from Home Depot that we can connect up and draw manually. And then you have something in between where maybe it's a larger generator that we wheel in that we connect up in the winter months, and then that can either be manual or auto. So that's what we're trying to decide right now, which way we want to go with that. And the reason why we were a little bit hung up on this is because it's much cheaper to put in the switch and you put in the new service than to do it later.
Hey, Mike, quick question for you. What's a rough range of price for the switch?
Well, we have it pegged at about 2K, and then I think we find that the auto one is going to be much more. Billy, you have looked into that with the electrical guy, right?
Yeah, and I don't remember the exact price now, but I think you're somewhat in the range.
For the two
And
without
I thought the reason we sort of stopped work on this in December was it ended up coming back to be going to be more than the two that we thought. It was going to eat up close to half of this $8,000 budget. So I didn't feel comfortable moving forward with that. If we couldn't do anything in December, we would do for the 8K because the switch was so important. And again, I think it gets back to what somebody was just saying about, we're trying to put in a switch for a generator we don't have yet. So again, I was trying to get the focus on what we need to do, which is get the electrical service upgrade done, get the things fixed in the building that we need, and provide a few more outlets for the Bayside Arts Fund. But I think we should be looking at sort of one of those manual switches. Has everybody in agreement there?
I don't personally know. I was just trying to get a handle on it. If a manual switch is $2,000 and an automatic switch is $3,000, that's negligible. If it's $2,000 and $10,000, that's a whole different kettle of fish.
And if the putting in,
Right.
and if putting in the manuals, if putting in the manual switch today makes putting in the automatic switch later much more expensive than I don't want to put in the manual today. So I think I need that comparative number for my
Okay.
own purposes.
We
I
also,
would say that we're probably looking at 1,500 for the manual and somewhere around 4 plus for the auto.
we need to size the generator too, Mike, to make sure that it's compatible with the switch and the 200 amp service.
Right, I just want to confirm what Paul said is, and I don't know if Mike knows that, because that's something that I found out after we had our meeting, is we're talking about putting in a 200 amp service, which you have a 100 amp service now. If you put in a 200 amp service, you have to have a bigger disconnection switch to CMP, which is the transfer switch. You have to have a bigger service for that. If you have a 100 amp service, then you'll have a smaller one. That all changes the prices. And the 200 amp service does make it more expensive. And if you are planning on doing that in the future, to have a generator, now is the time to do it when you're doing your upgrade for your 200 amp service, because it's going to be the cheapest option. If you have to do it later, then you've got to take away a lot of things that you've already done. You're going to have to take out, you've got to change things around. So it is going to cost you more money if you go that route. The other thing is, we got to check, and I haven't, you know, the electricians are all pretty busy right now. I have to check and get somebody down here to see if we have to also change the size of the line going from the community hall to CMP's telephone pole. 200 amp service, we may have to upgrade that line too.
I think that was mentioned.
Yeah, I think that we,
There's a lot of things happening, all to do with trying to get started on this upgrade upstairs.
Steve?
Yeah, I want to do some level setting. I have forgotten why we're even talking about a generator. And when I think about Bayside, I think the discussion was so that if the school was evacuated, there'd be a place, if there was no power, where people could stay warm. And while I think that's a wonderful cause, I have to ask if that serves the interests of the taxpayers in Bayside. And if we are committed to putting in a generator for that purpose, then that requires all the work we're talking about and the added expense. But if we're not going to put in a generator, then I question why we'd spend the time and energy on working on switches.
As a contingency.
I'm going to recognize myself. I'm going to follow Steve with that. These discussions started in October after 5 days without electricity. Everybody gets all excited about generators after we've been without electricity for a while. But the reality is, we have somebody in this building maybe twice a week or 3 times a week, you know, for 9 months out of the year. I'm not sure this building warrants a generator, as wonderful and lovely as they are. So we're back to, you know, do we really need a generator in this building, for this building? It's your call.
I would love to see a generator that's at least big enough to run with heating system. So,
Paul?
As I said earlier, we still need to at least anticipate the size and the cost of a generator that's going to be compatible with the size of the service and the necessary needs that it's going to draw against in terms of circuitry. You should at least know beforehand, whether we buy it or not, but I think we need to at least anticipate that information.
Do we want to decide now whether a generator is in our future plans? Judy's shaking her head no, plans are online.
I'm shaking my head no, because I don't have numbers. And I want to go back to Steve's, I liked your verb, level setting, to remind ourselves what our goal was in bringing the building up to 200 in any event. But this is, after all, a historic building, we want to make sure it's safe, we want to make sure it's usable, we want to make sure that everybody who wants to use it can use it in the way that it was built. But we're starting to chase our own tail here and make it bigger, better without understandings as to what our goals are.
I will have the firm cost by next meeting. I'll call my friend at CFP and ask him if he can maybe take a look at it, and like, see if really especially, and there's an opportunity, and maybe, that will help, but I think we should get some costs, because I think, in the end, the goal is to upgrade the service within the building code. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, if we can have some extra service to get us to the 200 amps, I think that's the most desirable. And then really, for backup, what we really need is just enough to run what we need to run in an event like that.
Right, so the pipes come first.
I guess
We
we
don't
can,
need to just run a Bayside event, a Bayside arts event. We just needed to run the basics of the building. And maybe we can just apply a shift to that generator and do it annually at a lot less money.
I guess we're convinced that we need a 200 amp service, right? Mike?
I don't see how we get out of 200 amp service if you want to do anything with the RFP.
Okay.
Moving on, Mike, anything else?
No, I think I need something else for time, thank you.
It's helpful.
Safety Committee, Wendy?
I just got a couple of updates. So now that we're at the beginning of the year, we're going to start looking for the lifeguard and the police. We have a plan to try to get it, folks that we had last year come back again and then supplement. Obviously, the goal is to have full coverage for the lifeguard. So last year, we only had 6 days a week. Our goal is to have 7 days a week. It did work well, starting a little bit later in the day, so we're going to go with that again as well. One of the things that sort of came up is that past year, there was a complaint about police, and it's not clear to me that we have a process by which a citizen does a complaint about the police actually follows that. So I plan to follow up with John on this to make sure that I'm just not aware that we already have a process in place. And if we don't, then at before the summer, I'd like to the overseers to actually come up with a process or policy for taking, complaints about the police. The other issue that, and I think I might have to follow up with the street planning committee, there has been some ongoing discussion about landscaping around basketball courts. I have talked to Tracy Drinkwater a little bit about that, and she's put together a loose plan and cost for that. So yes, this could be done sometime before the summer season starts. But that's not really a safety committee issue. It's really, one of the other committees, and then the overseers approving the costs associated with that. And then the final thing, I believe you heard at the last meeting that the safety committee is thinking about doing a safety fair. And so, assuming that there are no objections from the overseers, we'll look into a bit more about planning for that, as well as engaging the overseers and other members of the community in what the content should be, what it should be, and how we should go about doing that. So that's it for me. Any questions?
Nobody seems to have any questions here. Mike, any questions for Wendy?
At one point, we were talking about some sort of new fire ordinance. Is that occurring? Or?
That's so today, the governance committee, so I don't know, Judy, if the governance committee has started talking about that.
Actually, we have worked, because that one's the easy one, because we have the already approved one, and there has been drafts of clarification language going around. So I think that either at, maybe not February, but the March meeting will be presenting the final draft of that to the overseers for approval.
Can we see it before
Great,
then?
great.
Oh, yeah, there'll have to be a public hearing on it as well, which is why I said.
Right, and that doesn't go into effect until after it's voted on at the annual meeting.
Overseers can approve the fire ordinance as
And
long as
make
it's
it
a public
effective?
hearing.
And make it
Yeah.
effective? Oh, great. Okay. So it'll be ready for the summertime.
Yeah.
Judy, if you could just give me a copy of the bioordinance language as it gets settled so that I can share with the safety committee, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay, any more questions, statements, comments? Moving on then to town liaison, Paul, you have a report?
Yes. Just a couple of things related to the selectmen. The issue, and they both seem to center on the issue with the Malones, Rick Malone, on the corner of, is it Griffin
Griffin and George.
and George. And they reacted to this letter that John Spritz sent to them, saying that we've approved the extension of the porch of the Malone cottage. It's a minor thing, but they felt that they're the only ones that have the authorization to ratify a permit, a building permit, or anything related to buildings. So they just wanted to remind the overseers of that. The other thing related to Malone is that they no longer seem, they being the selectmen, no longer have an issue with the plowing of Griffin and George. Apparently it's resolved itself. Malones are going to be coming before the code enforcement officer to get a permit for constructing a stone wall adjacent to his property on the George Street side. So that has been a source of contention, but hopefully it'll be resolved. Currently, everything is okay, pending the response of the code enforcement officer. And the only other thing that's not really relevant to Bayside is is a twin oak in front of Palumbo's house, which is just outside the Bayside confines. And maybe Bill knows about it, but it's a twin oak that the town is going to split the cost of. We've been looking for Benner, and Benner's supposed to do that job as well. So maybe there's some leverage there that Bill can use to get both of them done.
Where's that at, Paul?
585, it's Palumbo, the red house there just before you,
Where's Barnard's old place on the left?
it's on the right.
On the right?
It's on the right.
I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, it was just, it's a town tree. So maybe you can coincide the two of them. And that's essentially all I have.
Any comments, questions for Paul? Okay. Tree planting, that's me. Basically, as far as the new committee, the tree planting committee, everything is on hold until May when people return to kind of set forth what their goals and plans would be. So no real report there at this point. Next is utilities, nothing for David Crowfoot. Are you here?
We had our meeting on Friday, and everything's working great, which is important to know because of the high tides we had and the surge that we had just a few weeks ago. No violations, everything's working great. There are 2 water leaks. One has just been identified. Billy's still searching for another. I don't know if you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I found one last night at 5 p.m. Just before I came in here, somebody came to me and said, well, I think I got a water leak, so I'm not sure. So I got to go investigate that after this meeting. I didn't do it before the meeting because entails getting out my listening device and doing a bunch of stuff first, so they said, okay. But it's not leaking in the house.
As you all know, we switched we still bill by trimester, but we switched the date by which we mailed the bills for the trimester to align it better to the fiscal year. We didn't have any real dramatic problems with people understanding that. They still paid within 30 days of receipt of the bill. So we appreciate people taking care of that. Amy put in the utility bills for some people a request that if we didn't have emails or cell phone numbers or current landlines, to please let us know, precisely for reasons such as Billy searching out water leaks. We need to be able to get in touch with you if something's going on with your property. We appreciate people doing that. If you didn't get one of these notices, but you feel as though we might not have your updated email or cell phone numbers, please let us know. We have no other action items.
Question about utility bills. So we didn't just change the mailing date, we changed the due date as well, correct?
It's always 30 days from the date of the mailing, yep.
Okay, so for village purposes, we had an additional payment on all of our utilities in calendar 2017.
If you paid it in 2017, yeah.
Well, we have to be paying on time, correct?
Well, the one that was mailed on December 15th would have had to be paid by January 15th.
Okay, that's why I asked if there was a change in due date.
Yeah, it's always, that. And then that's the state regulations, 30 days from date of bill.
Great, thanks.
Okay, tree warden, that is me. So I got together with Bill and I couldn't get a hold of Benners. Bill informs me that they generally just talk to him and he can't get a hold of them. So I called Green's Tree Service with Peter Green and we came over and looked at some trees that had been questioned. So we all met at my house, which is right across from the old jail. Okay, so there are 3 trees there that are in question and should probably come down. So there's 3 trees there. There's the tree at the end of the boat row. Bill, as far as describing where these trees are, you might help me. So there's a tree there that should come down. And then
Clinton's.
Crater Row, yeah.
There's a big birch tree there that's pretty bad shape.
Yeah.
Okay. And then on that little
And
street.
then down in the alleyway, down in back of, that goes into Auditorium Park, there's a big double, is it an oak or a ash? Might be an ash. It got struck by lightning several years ago. There is, if you look in the crotch, you can see the crack coming down through the center of it. There was a lot of discussion earlier, like in September, I believe, with one of the owners on Park Row, who was very concerned that if something happens with it, it's going to land on his house. His insurance company had been notified about the liability and all that. I don't know exactly where that come at. The previous tree warden that we had was there. She was working on that, and I don't know exactly. We never did get our tree guy up there to look at it, but we did get this Peter Green to look at it when Vicki and I and Peter Green looked at it, and he agreed that, yes, it probably should come down.
Did he give estimates for each of these?
Yes, okay, so he assured me on several occasions that he would drop something off contract this and that, but I never received it. Basically, he charges $85 an hour and figured it would take 3 days for all 5 trees, which as far as I can figure is, a little under $2,000, and I don't think that's such a bad price for 5 trees. So, I don't think we necessarily need to make a decision on that. I'm throwing that out for information purposes and to try to tie up loose ends. Apparently there is one tree still in question that Benner is supposed to do that we voted on to have removed.
And we think Benner's already contracted to do that.
Contracted to do it, possibly been paid, we're not sure, but anyway, one on Benner's list. So, we're not married to each of these people. I prefer to work with people who at least call me back. And so we're just putting that out there. I think the whole idea was to start looking at this tree thing as a budgetary item, because these are expensive. So then I went back as the interim tree warden, went back through many notes to find out when we replaced a tree. So we got a $2,000 tree replacement that went into, here, whatever, one of those parks over there. Okay.
Was it placed out?
No, the big park right there.
Rose Park.
Ruggles,
Big
okay.
one.
Oh, that long time ago, yeah, 2 years ago.
Not that, it's the only one that I can see that's been replaced that I saw there was any conversation about. So there's a lot of trees here, and if you want to replace all of them, we need to, it doesn't, this one oak that was hit by lightning, there is no room to put another tree down there. There's no room. And, you don't want to put another tree where you took a tree down because it was going to fall on wires. So we have some leeway there. And I did stop at Plants Unlimited. They have a whole price list of trees to choose from, different sizes based on the size of their trunk and stuff. They deliver, they don't plant. We find somebody to plant them. But I did want to start the conversation as far as, again, getting this in the budget, the monetary considerations that we have to take and figure out how fast you want this done and whatever. The idea is, Bill said it perfectly. The first thing is safety to people. The second is safety, non-destruction of property. We have a lot of trees. Excuse me. All of a sudden, I'm very, very aware of trees.
Yeah.
So if anybody has anything to say about that, is there a, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I personally have hired greens on the recommendation of my cousin because I needed to get a tree taken down this fall. And they were fast, timely, and responsive. And the price they charged me was about the price they had quoted to you. So that seems as though they're following a baseline and not thinking that sometimes people think taxpayers can afford more. So, and the other is, I think the replacement mandate has always been recognized, and of course it can't necessarily go in the exact same location because there could be a reason the tree died. It could because it's such a bad location. We're talking about making sure that there's no net loss of the canopy.
Okay.
What about the inventory, or what are we calling it? We're going to account for all the trees that we have, and what needs to be replaced, and what needs to be maintained. How's that going?
Part of that was going to be the tree committee. Okay, so right now we have two entities. Hopefully they can blend together. But I think
that's still in the
that's in the
stages.
process. Yeah. Okay. One other item here is a full-time tree warden. So I do have a name. I don't know if anybody else has talked to anybody who might be interested in it, but my neighbor, Tony Field, is year-round. He's a walker. He'd like to be involved. I asked him if he had the interest. And as the tree warden, as I understand the tree warden job with Bill now is that somebody has a tree, Bill goes down and determines if it's on private property or village property. If it's village property, he turns it over to the tree warden. And Bill doesn't want anything else to do with it. If he can, then just cross that right off of his list. So I'd love to take that out of Bill's hands, at which point then the tree warden gets involved, and if we can create a relationship with greens, we might have a little thing that works, on its own steam. So if it's okay, can I propose Tony Field at this, for the tree warden position?
I don't know, but if someone's willing to do it and wants to get involved.
Okay.
And is he a summer person or a year-round person?
He's year-round, sort of middle-aged, nice guy.
Is he related to Frank? Does he
Mhm.
live in the
Son.
house?
Mhm.
His son, yeah.
He's willing to do it without compensation?
Yes.
Hire.
Yeah.
Okay, should we do
So I move that we appoint that the president appoint, or the chair of the board in this circumstance appoint as the tree warden Tony Field of Main Street.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor? Oh, sorry.
Well, just a comment, you sort of complete the vote.
Okay, all in favor?
You can't extract the bill from this, no matter what you do,
Yes.
because Bill has.
Thank you.
Oh, no, yeah, exactly.
And as much as he may not want to be involved in it, I don't blame him, he's the guy that has to approve all the invoices, he's the guy that has to coordinate the work.
Okay.
The tree warden is really sort of,
Well, he
from
could
my
be the
perspective,
liaison, oh, no.
the tree warden is the person who does the groundwork, and Bill's the guy who ultimately makes it happen.
And the public relations. The tree warden does the,
Fields the calls.
yeah.
Fields the calls. Okay. And I think, you know, we can get together and work that out with Bill as to how he wants that to work. Yeah, no, I know, yes.
Is this man retired?
Oh, we hope not. Does he know what we
He is retired.
He's dead.
Huh? Disabled.
He did actually come in and I got to talk to him, a very nice person.
Great.
Very intelligent. And he's like, you know, I'm gonna have all this on electronically, you know, and probably, you know, a couple of months, by the end of the year, you know, I'll have it all electronically on file, so he's great.
Looks like
He
the
did
right
come
guy
in.
for the job.
Yeah.
Okay, he'll be very happy, thank you. Okay, new or continuing business? Any new business? Next Sunday's meeting is February 18th
9 a.m.
at 9 a.m.
That's the holiday weekend.
Wow. Oh, it's a holiday weekend.
It's Washington's birthday weekend, but that's okay.
Okay.
Move to adjourn. Move to adjourn.
Lee seconds. All in favor?
Yay.
Adjourned.
Good job.